were just presented, in that we're a vertical search engine, and our belief is that with the volume of content out in the web, that the verticalization of search is an inevitable event, and we've spent most of the time servicing the analysts in the intelligence community with search, with semantic search, and we've just moved into the consumer space, so we'll be presenting search in that. But I suppose the exciting question at hand, really, as this is a lot about marketeers, is I've been asked to be a moderator more in line with broken mic. Does it? Oh, it's working now, yeah. In actually, you know, brands and the value between paid search and social media. I think we're going to make it a lot more interactive, in that if you feel strongly on any part, whether it's social media or paid search is the area that really should win the day, then, you know, please put your hand up and then really take part in the debate. It's not us giving all the answers. It really is a case of us just opening up a question, maybe two or three other questions, and everybody firing off what their view is. I suppose somewhere down the line it comes down to how much money is spent in each sector. And I'll throw it over to Janelle, first of all, and colleague John. They can introduce themselves, and then on one side of the fence we have the paid search side of why paid search really is the area that deserves most of the dollars spent in the advertiser's mix or the marketeer's mix, and then over to John to defend the social media side of the equation. It's almost like we could have had the head of sales from a number of different you know, organizations, maybe even brought in TV or radio to throw into the argument, or even newspapers if they're still around. But I'll throw it over to you first of all, Janelle.
So I'm Janelle Larrabee, and I've been doing these summits for quite some time. I think I figured out that this is my 9th one. So I'm happy to be here again and to be participating in this panel. I did just want to plug, there is buzzword bingo again today, because Frank and I both thought this would be a great idea. But we are giving away an iPad at the end of the day today, and it is here, so someone will walk out of here with an iPad today.
Janelle, does that count as a humble brag?
Everyone can go ahead and mark off the word humble brag. Not all of the boards are the same either, so start watching for those words. You should get through them fairly quickly. They're pretty easy. So once you get a bingo, you can go out to Elaine at the registration desk and drop your business card into the bowl, and we're going to draw at the end of the day.
Is honey badger on the list? No? Okay. So my name is John Elvacrog. I'm kind of the outlier, I think, here in this audience, in that we're very much so, I'm CEO of 140 Proof, very much so on the display side of the world, not search-based, not SEO-based, not SEM-based, and so I think I was brought in as the whipping boy to take all the arrows from the audience. And we run at 140 Proof, just a quick plug and then I'll be done with that, is we effectively run a social advertising network. So if you think about a millennial media in the mobile world, the 140 Proof network enables you to access the 50% plus of the activity that's happening in the social media world off of Twitter Inc. and Facebook Inc. Owned properties. And we do a lot of things that I think one of the points that I really think be really relevant is the interest graph, and we talked a lot about in the last session. I think there were a couple points. One of the questions about, from a search perspective, what do you think the strongest personalization indication will be? From our perspective, it was an easy answer, and it wasn't one of the items that was up there. It's a follow. I think a follow, beyond a like, beyond a retweet, beyond a lot of the other pieces that were up there, is an incredibly strong indication of your interests. And I think when you take those interests and a whole bunch of other data and build that together into this interest graph, it's a really powerful tool that I think you'll see Facebook and Twitter and Google probably integrating more and more in the future.
So I think just to set the stage, these are rough numbers depending on which analysts you want to go with. In that I suppose the US media spends about $300 billion. Paid search currently gets about $35 billion of that, a share of that. Social media, my guess would be about $5 billion of that mix. Are they going to cannibalize or move some of the money from paid search into social? We'll probably broaden it out of how the media spend will change as it has done over the last 10 years and maybe into the next 10 years. But pass it over to Janelle to where's paid search going? Is social media going to make a big impact on the revenue distribution for yourselves?
Yeah. So absolutely. There's a lot of inventory when it comes to social. There's tons of inventory out there, and I look at social right now as really being where I can put my leftovers. I'm going to maximize search because that's where the ROI is.
Spoken like a true direct response maiden. I like that.
But yeah, I mean, we're going to maximize search as much as we can, and then what's left over, we can go and we can play with social, because it's it really is. It's a playground right now because it's not figured out. It's the targeting's getting better and we're able to do more, but we're just not there in terms of being able to produce this like stellar ROI. I mean, I have clients in search that have like a 50-to-1 ROI, and then you've got like social coming in at 50 cents. Yeah,
no, it's a great point, and I do think that social is not figured out yet, but I absolutely believe that search, as powerful as it is, will not go away, but I think it will be usurped in the very near future by social, and probably maybe less so certainly from a direct response perspective, and maybe less so because of its overall effectiveness, but just the fact that it attacks a different part of the advertising problem. So instead of the lower funnel conversion, there's a huge amount of television and brand building and demand generation that once that comes online into digital, and I think the earlier comments about the growth of the tablet business and where and how people are consuming information, the more traditional TV cords that get cut, I think those dollars will have to go somewhere. And I think when done the right way, social advertising is a very powerful tool, and eventually will usurp the search crown from a digital media perspective. And I want to also just make one quick clarification. So social media, to me, social media versus social advertising is, in my mind, a little bit like search engine optimization is to search engine marketing. So search engine optimization is something that, of course, everybody should do, just like social media is like a PR channel or a CRM channel that people should be focused on. But when you actually want to put scalable dollars on the to deploy those in a real way for big brands or for direct response, you have to do it in search engine marketing. And I think similarly you'll find that from a social advertising perspective. And it's a huge distinction that I think gets muddied together. Maybe even in the early days how SEM and SEO got muddied together and thought it was just all about organic. And very clearly you found out that advertising from a brand perspective is hugely valuable.
Yeah, I mean, when you break it down, it's these two buckets. You have demand generation and demand capture, and but the simple fact of the matter is that no matter what you're doing from an advertising perspective, whether you're branding or you're running direct response, you have to maximize your demand capture. Because all the advertising in the world is a waste if you have no way to accept the response, right? So that's why search will always be, kind of top dog. I think that spending could potentially, will kind of exceed search spending when it comes to social advertising at some point in the near future. But it's never going to take money from search. It's going to be taking from other demand generation channels, like TV, like radio.
I think Google and the other folks are highly incented to make sure that it never goes away. And I would also say the search collects, and I don't think I'm alone in this one, collects an outshare. Google has built the ultimate value capture system for the last click, that all the rest of the upper funnel activities and marketing activities that go into building brand awareness and building a brand and recognition and understanding, they have, it's an amazing monopolistic juggernaut that they capture that last piece and that last click. And it is the holy grail, being able to attribute, I spent money here and it achieved X click or X result is fantastic. And you don't get that in brand, you don't get that in television. And so I do think it'll be interesting. I was asked a question last night. Will there be an attribution model that's generated that will allow you to say, oh, the money that I'm spending on social, I can tie that back in the same way that, that I do from a direct response perspective? And I don't think it'll happen. I think it'll be one of those fundamental things that people will see at a broad level, like they do on TV spending. I mean, TV spending is very difficult to attribute to dollars spent versus dollars brought in the door from a revenue perspective. But I think in the same way, people have been doing it for 50 plus 60, 70 years, and it keeps growing each year. Well, maybe not as the shift goes on, but it's a very, very big market for a reason. It's not just because people are blindly following the fact that we hope TV is effective.
Yeah, and the weighted attribution is a good point. It's something that we've kind of already implemented it at my agency. Anywhere where we're running Facebook ads going off-site and trying to run direct response there, we've moved to a weighted attribution model that puts the heaviest weight towards the first click. And some people here have asked, why? How'd you model that? What was the methodology? And I said, Facebook needs all the help it can get when it comes to performance. So that's the methodology there for now. But it does help, and it's we are getting smarter with things, and I think that that's a really good point, because pulling in and looking at these weighted attribution models, it does allow us to give some value to that demand generation more at the top of the funnel. And I think that really where we need to go is we need to be able to get we need to value the impression. And in search, there's not much value to the impression, and the impression is something we haven't been able to track. We can't we can't cookie it, and that's something that I think could really.
That's a format thing, in that the impression really is just a text link next to it. Do you think if the actual format of the text link changed and maybe incorporated images or video or photograph, then you could actually weight it and maybe add some kind of CPM value to that? Or
well, if you have Google conversion tracking enabled, you can actually go in and look in the search funnels and see the value of the impression and kind of look back. And I have a fairly new account that we started working on like in the last month. When I went in and looked at the search funnels, I saw that the average time from the first click was about 2.5 days from the first click to the conversion. But it was 8.5 days from the first impression to the conversion. And that was a really powerful thing for us to know going into working on a new piece of business. Because day one we were able to say, we're putting in new tracking, so we should expect to see kind of an 8-day lag before we start seeing where our benchmark should be. And that information is so powerful, and that's something that as search marketers we haven't been able to harness the value of the impression and to be able to track it and incorporate it as a part of our optimization. And it's one thing that's been a huge asset to display, and I think that social's getting there say quickly, and they have the optional pricing models of CPM versus CPC.
So John, when you're talking to say you're talking to a head of marketing at a major brand, how do you compare your value to other forms of media that they're actually buying? And do you even poke a stick at search in that, or do you poke a stick somewhere else when comparing social media value to other forms of media?
Yeah, I don't think we poke a stick at search, but we definitely try and position away from it. In the point that search, to poke a stick at search would be, a really tough thing, because it's just so effective and it has awesome ROI and it's a very valuable part of the mix. I think the big piece that we focus on in social advertising is 3 components that I think deliver huge value. The first is the ability to do extremely advanced interest-based targeting. So I think from a targeting perspective, actually delivering delivering an audience of people who have an affinity towards your brand, your product, your message is hugely valuable. I think the second piece is the environment in which that ad goes. So instead of a display ad, and so I guess to answer it, we more sort of compete against display advertising. Instead of putting your ad on an unknown banner on an unknown web page out there in the web, you can put an ad in the social world in a very controlled environment, So all of our ads actually show up at the top of a timeline or of a news feed, and so you're able to control that environment. And that environment not only is very controlled, but probably second to search. When you go to Twitter, when you go to Facebook, when you go to one of these social platforms, you're looking to go somewhere else. You're looking to find information, click away, discover new things. And so I think, obviously, like the point of going to search is to go away somewhere else. The point of going into social is to discover something. So I think if you can match a message in the same, I think there's some interesting parallels from a search perspective. If you can match that message in the same way paid search results should be very closely matched to organic search results, then you have a win for the user, for the advertiser, and for the company. You want to do the same thing, maybe even more so in the social stream, where your message, you know it's not something random out of the blue, but something that almost blends in and looks like content. And then I think the third piece is the idea that those ads can be shared. And that's where it sort of like creeps a little bit back into social media, but I think the value of being able to take that ad and turn it into an actual testimonial is super powerful. I've never known a banner ad that's been shared. I've never known a search ad that's been shared. Yet we see, you see it across Facebook, across Twitter, and across the 140 Proof network, a huge percentage of ads that are shared and then rebroadcasted as testimonials out to an even larger group. And those three things I think are really powerful. I think they're powerful in a brand building way. But I think they do, work well in the search world. And I think like the confusion, there are definitely like a lot of points that confuse the issue. So it's a tough discussion to have with a lot of advertisers. But I think a year from now, it'll be a very different discussion.
So I think just drawing some summaries in my mind as I'm listening to you speak there, John, is there's still a huge shift in marketing dollars in that even when you put all of digital spend, and my guess is about digital spend, including display, social, rich media, search obviously by far the biggest component, and if you were measuring media by advertising spend and then value to the company, the biggest media company in the world is a paid search company. There's still $250, $240 billion spent in other forms of media. TV being the biggest recipient, about $70 billion still spent in the US. Then radio, and then all of the other forms of media, of print and whatnot. So how much of that do you think is going to still move? Do you think we're already there? What percentage do you think is actually going to move from that? And who's going to be the biggest losers? And who's going to be the biggest winners?
I think the interesting thing that search did for advertising as a whole is that we changed the expectation. And, we've constantly been like striving for more data points and making results more tangible. And so we've kind of like raised the bar of what expectations are of advertising. And even for brand marketers, they're looking for more tangible results. What were my impressions for real, not like estimated? What were they actually? And we can, search kind of, I think, really revolutionized metrics and data. And I think that there's becoming more of a demand for that on the offline side, and there's going to have to be some serious adaptation to processes there, or they're going to lose more of the money. And I think that you've seen rates and growth in television has slowed down so much. And if you look at like Super Bowl ads, it's cheaper to buy a Super Bowl ad today than it was 5 years ago, and that's the wrong direction, for a business to grow, or for an industry to grow. So I think that it's going to continue to be offline media until they can produce more tangible results.
I think even though I think TV and traditional media is declining, at least flat and maybe declining, like we
Flat's
definitely,
the new growth, huh?
People have predicted that. One of the fascinating things that I think you saw on the Google chart from the usage, where when people are using tablets, when they're using mobile, is a phenomena around the second screen. And I think social media and Facebook and Yahoo, and Facebook and Twitter have totally changed that dynamic, and possibly could give throw a life vest to the TV industry, particularly the non-time shifted TV industry. And I think the answer to what is the actual second screen, is it mobile, is it a laptop, is it a tablet? It's social. So those curves are driven by primetime TV. And if you look at Twitter and you look at TV, there's an unbelievable amount of activity synchronized with the broadcast time of primetime TV. It's some of the things we do with a lot
Actually, can I ask a question? How many people in the audience have internet TV? Like, who has like Apple TV or Google TV? Wow. That's actually a pretty impressive amount.
Yahoo actually did a stat that of smartphone users, 85% of TV consumption is done while they have a smartphone or a mobile device in their hand, which is really, really powerful. I mean, I think like the next step to internet TV is huge, but this almost like a retro trend of we're all going to sit down and watch at the broadcast time Glee, and everyone's going to get into it and comment about it, is a crazy counter-trend phenomena. So I think that there's a lot of money to come over into social.
Obviously we're a tech-savvy audience, but I think that the fact that the majority of the people in this room, like the gross majority, have an internet television application. So I think that that's signifies that we are getting, we are moving to the point where more tangible results could be possible from offline media. So. Oh,
you're saying the internet TV allows you to track a lot of different things.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know if anyone here has ever actually bought TV through Google TV ads, but my background prior to starting Chaco was actually at an agency that did a ton of direct response television, and there's some really cool metrics behind it.
You mean the 4 people who have Google TV?
No, but they have some really cool tracking capabilities there, and I think that that is not necessarily Google TV as a media buying platform, but I think those types of metrics really are the future of offline advertising. So.
I'd love to just ask a question of the audience from a Facebook perspective, and whether you're advertising on it or not advertising on it today, whether you will or won't in the future. Is Facebook a brand advertising platform or a direct response advertising platform? And I'd love to hear sort of the audience's opinion on. Okay, we'll do. Well, you just blew it, but that's their role, I guess. Brand advertising. Direct response, or both? Yes. No, it's an interesting point, and I think that's also one of its challenges. Is that I think it's hard, even though I have heard here at this conference, search can be the search brand building group of folks in the search world is an interesting sort of phenomena for me. Yeah. I think that probably when a tool is both of those things, I think that makes it a challenge from a comprehension perspective and a marketer adoption perspective. So,
and I know there's monetizing kind of the micro conversions was a topic earlier today, and I think that there's this hybrid format too with Facebook advertising where you're driving the like, but then you're working to monetize the like, right? And really understand what the value is and what should your acquisition cost of a like be in order for it to be profitable for you. So there's this kind of like hybrid model as well. So you've got your like ads, you've got your off Facebook ads, and then you've got your 2-step process of driving the like and then trying to basically remarket to that fan to get them to buy something. So.
Yeah, I think that's one of the huge questions. What is the value of a like? And in some ways, it almost seems like a page view metric from a decade ago. Like how many page views do I have? I don't fundamentally care. It's like what's your actual business metric that you want to deliver on? So how many fans or likes do I have? I'm not sure it's fully relevant. It's probably more. If I have the right fans, that's much more powerful.
Yeah, quality versus quantity, right?
Yes.
So, you can go out and you can run a campaign to drive likes, so for one of my clients, we actually they send stuff overseas to the troops for every like that they get. So they get tons and tons and tons and tons of likes. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, and it's so low. But it might not. I don't have a very good perception of the likes that we're driving from this, because who's not going to like that ad, right? This is good. This is for the greater good, but I don't think that means that these people are actually going to buy. So.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges. I mean, I think that's it is one of the barriers holding back social advertising is the primarily Facebook, because there's billions of dollars of that $5 billion in social, 90% of it's going to Facebook. And that sort of like their lack of clarity around, everything's about putting ads on the right rail and doing CPC ads, and it's just an extension of Google, which is where they started, versus their migration into, no, everything's a like, harvesting likes. And then the latest piece, which I think is interesting, but not at the end game, which is the sponsored stories component, where you're mixing in some of the social graph components, but you're not really, in my mind, you're not really taking advantage of the really strong, powerful interest advertising and other data that you can get. I think in the last presentation, whoever was against the social graph, like, it's interesting that we're all friends and we all are connected together on Facebook, but that doesn't tell us a lot from a marketer's perspective about what our individual interests are, or what we'd purchase or where we'd go on vacation. And I think that's the next level that makes things
there's too much. Specifically within Facebook, there's too much that they know that they're not letting advertisers tap into in order to make it a cost-effective advertising channel for direct response. I mean,
Zuckerberg keeping it for himself?
No, I think that they're too concerned with privacy issues. But I mean, I think that we're going to see some pretty cool things come from that probably within the next year. Just because Google's already doing it. I mean, Google has, these interest-based categories and things like that where you don't really, they've got this bucket of users that kind of match, or we've got this other bucket of users that's kind of like the people in your remarketing list. So they're taking things that they know, they're just not telling you what all those things are. And then allowing you to advertise to them, and I think that we're going to see similar things coming from Facebook as well.
And I think it's a cool point. Like, if you look at
I want a CPA model.
if you look at Google, there's probably no entity on the planet that knows more about any individual than Google. If you're a Gmail user, every one of your credit card transactions, everything you buy from Amazon, everything is somewhere inside of Google. And the fact, that they live up to their motto and do, actually they do the right thing.
Do no evil.
They do. Well, they do some, but very little, right? Compared to a lot of other platforms out there. And I think that's a hugely valuable thing. It's also one of the. I've heard a lot of people who've started advertising on Facebook and have used some of the very personal demographic information, and that has been shocking to people. One of the cool things about, if you will, the open social advertising world and capturing the interest graph is it's all public information. So it's the same information that's being indexed by Google, that's out there, that I could look at, anybody could look at. It's effectively like the Gary Vaynerchuk model of how do you leverage social data to do individual one-to-one marketing, but just done at mass. And so I think in the same way that you look up your Twitter profile and say, oh, what are the things that you're interested in doing? And then you use that to start a discussion at an individual level. I think when you do that and you use public information to start a discussion with a customer as a brand, at scale, at 10 million users that you want to target in social advertising, that's a really powerful tool and a lot less creepy than sort of digging through the sock drawer and finding out secrets, which I think a lot of the behavioral stuff, fortunately not Google, but a lot of the behavioral people do some things that are a little unsettling.
Well, and I think that that's kind of going back to paid search and what made it so successful is that people don't like to be advertised to, but they didn't really see paid search ads as ads. And then we were able to do so much with testing and optimization that I think paid search results do a better job of delivering a good experience to the user than organic does oftentimes, and you're able to kind of direct them into a shorter, more concise path for what they're looking for. And but it goes back to people not seeing it as an ad and seeing it as part of the solution for what they were looking for. It was the answer, and that's where. And so push versus pull. In Facebook, in Twitter, we're still in an environment that someone's not looking to leave.
True. And I think you bring up another point from a Google perspective, why search advertising, for a lot of reasons, won't go away. But another one is that intent signal. From an advertiser perspective, or just from a content seeker perspective, the intent of typing in the Canon D90 camera into a search box is probably like the most magical clue as to what you want, what's of relevance to you at that moment. And that is like, I don't think there's another medium that delivers such a strong intent signal. And I guess, like the future from a social advertising perspective will be the interest signal. And I think they're two, I don't think they the title of this, will the interest graph or interest information be blended back into search? Maybe, but I don't think it needs to. I don't think there's any, that signal on its own is so compelling and so strong, and even sort of my behavioral background, where I've been, what I've searched on in the past, I don't know what percentage. It'd be interesting to sort of get into the minds of the search geniuses at Google, how much that improves the results. My guess would be, it's a minor sort of tweaking because of the power of that, and I think that's one of the reasons why search is hugely here to stay, because it's an overwhelmingly compelling signal.
I don't know how many people there are in the audience that are actually controlled budgets for marketing and of all forms, let alone just paid search. But I'm just curious if there are any. I mean, can you put your hands up if you're in control of a budget for spend in advertising? Will you be with all of the new channels? Obviously going back to Michael, of the new channels of the way search will be consumed. At the end of the day, Google's approximately $40 billion this year. You've got to say 80% of that is going to be was from the desktop. And as these other channels of iPads and smartphones and TVs, Sony and Samsung TVs, come online. How much are you going to, if you could, would you spend more than 20% more money on search?
Test budget and you use it as a research fund. So you use all these emerging technology as traditional becomes digitized. You use the learning that you have on paid search, which keywords are working.
Yep.
You apply that keyword to a TV buy. Who would have thought search experts could buy Google TV based on keywords and beat direct response TV buy performance?
Right.
The same thing with
Hold on. This is awesome.
Yeah, he's got some great things.
Yeah.
the way we need to think about this as more of a research buy. For instance, you leverage the research and the learnings that you have on search, which keywords are performing well, and use that as a base for your display buy. That's why you see this convergence between search and DSPs and ad exchanges. Secondly, you can buy Google TV based on keywords. I did this for one of my clients, and we totally beat the direct response TV buy by more than 22%. You could buy content versus networks, and that's cherry picking the best placements for your advertisers. So I think it's the evolution of transparency and giving your advertisers optics into the overall optimization process as well. And I think the convergence with social and search, it's what keywords are working and what digital conversation topics can you leverage and integrate that. And I think the other thing is the innovation in ad formats with Raise and site links and being able to drive social platforms through those extensions. So you do have to test, and I recommend everyone to test a portion of it and then scale after you get those core learnings.
So will that also then impact on the way that negatively the way you spend on other forms of media?
I think it's incremental. I don't think it's impacting lion's share. TV and PR drives demand as a search practice. We are capturing demand. We don't really create awareness. We capture that. So you don't want to negate from what's going to be the lion's share of the awareness channel. You want to complement it and capture that and kind of scale it.
Yeah, actually, from the, I think it was the intent intent keywords panel from yesterday. You know, one thing I found interesting there is that in search, we almost can't create demand with search, because when you try to go too broad on these super head terms, your ad doesn't serve on it. There's a reason you're not getting ads on those page and on those results, and it's not because we're not trying, but it's because it's more because of the user experience and because they have such poor click rates that Google's not going to serve an ad on them. You know, that's more of what that boils down to, at least in my mind. And so that demand generation does have to come from elsewhere. We can't just go on those one-word phrases that have, you know, 5 million impressions a day.
Any other marketeers that have got a view on that, who control a budget?
We got someone in the back. Can we get a microphone?
Sorry, this is Luke from Overstock. This is just kind of similar to some of my comments yesterday. It's all a scale thing, right? You know, if we're going to start splitting out campaigns for mobile, for tablets, for Facebook, you know, when I have a team of 4 analysts, we're already stretched pretty thin. So it really has to be a really strong advantage, you know, splitting my memory foam mattress topper campaign out exclusively for mobile. You know, is that going to be a big enough win to designate, you know, my analyst spending time on it? We've seen mixed results, to be honest with you. So
my advice there is actually just to go ahead and run one campaign on both, then look at things by device so that you can see how much data is there to see whether or not it justifies having its own campaign. That would be my advice.
Does it make sense to have separate mobile and web campaigns at all? I mean, just like it certainly
Yes.
did in the world of feature phones, but in the smartphone world, what are the people are nodding their heads? Why?
There's fewer ads displayed on the mobile device, so it can be a little bit more competitive. The initial reason was because everyone was opting out of mobile, so you get these really low, you know, CPCs there, as long as, you know, your site displayed pretty well. But now it's actually becoming very competitive because there's only 2 ads at the top of the page and then 2 ads at the very bottom. So really, if you're not in position 1 or 2 on mobile, you're not there.
Janelle's absolutely right. I think the other thing is you can't leverage ad format opportunities. For, you know, with mobile, you can also have coupons, you can have extensions, and those ad extensions actually give you 100% line share of the digital shelf on a mobile device. So you're pushing down all those organic listings. So you're not fully optimizing or leveraging those opportunities.
Yeah, the other thing that's cool about doing mobile-specific campaigns, when you do have a website that's just absolutely hideous on mobile, you can actually run it as click-to-call only. So from that mobile device, someone clicks on your ad and it just automatically dials.
It's probably one of the best places from a mobile perspective. Like, we're big fans of mobile, and a lot of social activity, you know, upwards of 50%, maybe more, like 60% happens in the mobile world. But I've always been shocked. I think search is probably one of the greatest things on mobile, because you actually have a signal, you have some signal. You know, like the current state of mobile targeting seems so low. You know, like you can do some geo, you can do device, you can do carrier, but does that really, like, from a banner display, I know that's not the people in this room, but from a banner display perspective, it seems like, you know, just a general broadcast trying to hit everybody.
Yeah, I think we're going to
see, really focused.
That's where we need, like, some hyper-local targeting for mobile, because I think that based on someone's surroundings, you could derive intent. So if you know that someone is searching for red high heel shoes and they're near the mall, then, you know, you could serve them different ads, even though they're in the same city as if they were, you know, 2 miles away. They might be getting kind of just like the shopping plaza. Like, I don't know. I just think that there's a lot more that can be done with mobile from a hyper-local standpoint.
And do you think the increase in the mobile search spend will then decrease some of the desktop spend? Or again, it's going to, you know, it's going to take pie from somewhere else? It's going to take some more money out of somebody else's bucket of money?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could shift. I don't think we're going to start seeing a decline in desktop search, but I think that primarily the growth is going to come from mobile.
I think you totally see a decline in desktop search, but I think that's outstripped by the growth in mobile. I mean, I think there's just like mobile becomes so big. I mean, I think mobile is what the web wanted to be at some point in time, and I think that's attraction of tablets. I mean, to me, tablets have zero, like, I have to do work, so I have a laptop. So there's like a tablet doesn't really is a redundant sort of device to me, but for a lot of people, you know, it's an entertainment device. I think it's what the web wanted to be 15 years ago. And so I think you will see people moving, although I'm not even sure if a tablet you can really call it
Can we do another
mobile.
audience poll? How many people have more than 2 devices here at the conference with them? So laptop, tablet, smartphone.
More than 2.
More than 2. So, okay. How many people have more than 3? Okay, so what's your fourth?
2 phones.
I have a laptop, I have an iPad, I have my smartphone, and I think that's it. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay. No, that's okay. Who has more than 3?
1 plus 1 plus 1.
And a pager. Well, I guess a fourth could be like an e-reader.
Well, there's a
in
lot of
addition
people
to
that carry
the tablet.
2 phones, you know, so there's a
Okay.
lot of people that carry 2 smartphones, some people even 3, and all of a sudden, you know, you can have 4 or 5 devices relatively easily.
Okay, so
but I think if you think about the rest of the world, though, you know, you think about places like India, where the fixed line phone was just bypassed by simple phones. And now I think there are only about 100 million smartphones. So sorry, there are only 100 million people with computers in India, but there are 200 million people. And within 3 years, they will all have smartphones. You know, so all of a sudden, but my question there is, from a marketeer's perspective, is if you're going to see rapid growth and more growth in spend, particularly as you've seen an increase of IPOs coming back into the marketplace and the value of digital media companies, you know, increase, you know, pretty well over the course of the last 3 years, is there going to be then a decline from the $40 billion approximately spent in paid search at the moment is going to shift half of that into mobile search, particularly as they're trying to, you know, treat them as 2 different channels? Or is it going to be 40 billion staying on the desktop, another 40 billions going into the smartphone? The marketeers are still only spending 300 billion. Well, someone's got to give. Someone's losing money. Someone's got to, you know, is TV going to lose another $20 billion and it's going to go into the phone? You know, because obviously you can tell from, I'm from the other side of the channel. I've always thought it's really interesting in that for the last 3 quarters, paid search is higher than TV in the UK. And that's just on desktops. You know, so, and there's still $70 billion spent in the US. You know, so that mix, and I think that, you know, as you're going to bring in new forms of content creation, because social media is the best example of the cheapest form of content creation, it's the user creating the content on mass scale, then that's going to suck up a big ton of money as well, and it isn't necessarily going to come from search.
I think that what we're going to see is that we're going to see other formats like television and radio actually go through a dramatic pricing change. So it's not that people are going to do less; they're going to pay less for it.
Yep.
They're going to be, you know, so they're going to be buying the same amount, but they're going to be paying less for it, and that's where that money is going to come from.
I think I've just noticed the time on your watch there. I should have been keeping better track of time. Has anyone got any questions they want to, you know, or anything they want to throw into the debate or
there were some points earlier about, you know, is it brand, is it direct? And everybody said, hey, it's both. And I'm just curious about what percentages of budget we're seeing in either.
Good question.
I find it hard to track. I will say our first set of advertisers have been spending in direct response more than Bing on search in the social channel. So I was astounded by that in the past couple months.
What does that say? Does that say something about Bing or about social?
Both.
Yeah.
You know what I think that says? I think that goes back to the inventory. Because, I mean, typically we see very strong performance out of Ad Center, you know, on the search side. And it's always a, how do we get more? So I think it's not that people wouldn't spend more there. It's just that there's not enough demand. So it goes back to demand generation. And so you've got to go back and generate the demand because there aren't enough queries there.
Was direct response cost competitive on Facebook, for example, compared to search? Wow, that's shocking. Because in the studies that we've done and the advertisers that we've spoken to, like there's such a delta from a click-through rate perspective and sort of a cost perspective that we haven't seen sort of that connection happening, where people still sort of like Google wins.
One other thing, Chad, can you like quantify that a little bit? Because Chad's from Kinshu, so I'm assuming he's looking at a pretty large bucket of social spend.
Yeah, the only way it can be, the way that social is being quantified as being more valuable from an ROI perspective is when you factor in customer acquisition. So it's a great new customer acquisition driver, and unless you pump in LTV, it won't look good. But if you do, it starts to look really good and start to overtake things like Bing.
So the value of a fan, in other words, you take a fan or a like and you attach $10 to that, and then it starts looking
not a fan
good.
or a like. It's someone
Lifetime
who
customer.
bought something for the first time with your brand.
Yep.
It's,
Lifetime
so
customer.
It was astounding.
Yeah.
You think we have time? No, I think we. Yeah, I think that just for time-wise, I think we're gonna cut it down there. So let's thank our panel and our debate. Thanks, guys.